Welcome to Achieve Wealth through value-add real estate investing. This is the show where the guru hype is banned and you get direct insights from commercial real estate operators. If you're a passive investor, this show can help you better understand investment opportunities. And if you're an active investor, the lessons from each episode can help you to become more effective in your own deals. Now, here's your host, investor and author, James Kandasamy.
Hey audience and listeners, this is James Kandasamy from Achieve Wealth Podcast. Today we have Tim Bratz from Legacy Wealth Holdings. Tim is a multifamily syndicator / sponsor who owns almost 3,200 units, almost valued at $250 million in value. Hey Tim, welcome to the show.
James, appreciate you having me, buddy. Thank you.
Absolutely. Happy to have you here. We've been trying to get you on the show for some time and we have been playing tag on the appointments. That's good. So can you tell me which market are you focusing on right now?
I'm actually in 6 different markets, 6 different states. Pretty heavy in the Southeast though. Majority of my property, about 70% of my property is in South Carolina and Georgia. But I'm also in Ohio, which is where I live. And then I'm also in some Texas, Oklahoma, and I got a couple of vacation rentals down in Florida as well.
Okay. Without going too much into detail, just quickly, how did you start and then how did you scale to 3,200 units within how many years?
Yeah, man. I was going through college when the last market cycle was going gangbusters. So 03 to 07, I'm going through college. Everybody said, if you want to make money, get involved in real estate. I ended up moving out to New York City because my brother was living out there. And I became a commercial real estate agent for businesses, So I broker leases, and I brokered a lease that was 400 square feet in Manhattan, and it was $10,000 a month. And so I was like, wrong side of the coin. I need to be owning real estate, not brokering it, right?
Correct.
So I got into a lot of the residential stuff. And I think a lot of investors get into real estate because of the allure of passive income and residual income. But then many of us get stuck doing this transactional stuff of flipping houses and wholesaling. And I went through that same phase. I thought I had to stockpile my own cash. I didn't understand that you could syndicate, that you could raise private money and bring in equity partners and hire sponsors to then co-sign on loans. I didn't know that was possible. So I went through the whole residential side of things and bought my first apartment building in end of 2012. So just shy of 7 years ago. It was a little 8-unit building. And I fixed it all up, put tenants in place. And I was like, man, I'm making better returns on this than I am flipping houses, and it's way less headaches. And so I bought another 8-unit and kind of built up a portfolio, about 150 units with some partners. That partnership ended up going bad a few years later. In 2015, I ended up liquidating everything and then just going back out on my own. And so I started on my own and just kind of partnered up with a couple of people. They just started raising money for different projects. And I partner up with good operators and bring money to those projects and help sponsor those loans. Or I start buying my own properties here locally in Cleveland. And over the past 4 years, pretty much in August of 2015, I started buying my own stuff. So it's been right at 4 years now. I built up a little over 3,200 units, 3,207 units as of today, about $251 million worth of property value. And my model is based on the residential realm, actually. I buy property and I have to be all in for 65% of the stabilized value because that's what the model was. I never read a book. I never went to a seminar before. I just kind of developed it myself. And I started buying properties, apartment buildings the exact same way. So I have to be able to buy it, renovate it, and be all in for 65% of that stabilized value. And so a lot of the buildings that I buy, I'm into a building that's worth $10 million for about $6.5 million. So on the $250 million worth of property, I only owe to lenders and my equity investors a little. It's like right at $150 million. So we have a lot of equity in our properties too.
Got it. So it's very interesting you bring up that 65% because that's the exact number that I had when I was doing my single family for zero money down, right?
Exactly, right.
So I counted if I get at 65% ARV, which is after repair value, you should be able to do a second loan, which is I call it as a double closing of a loan, right? You have 2 loans. One loan is like you do like a short-term loan. and at 65% you buy it, you take a rehab loan, and then you flip it to the long-term loan, which means you probably will
That's my entire model. So I don't traditionally syndicate. I buy distressed assets. I'm bigger than some of the smaller investors, but not quite a hedge fund or a REIT. And I'm willing to get my hands dirty. I'm willing to actually do the work. So I take on a little bit more distressed type properties. I only buy in A and B class areas, but the properties are typically C class type properties that need physical improvements, better management, like really not just value add, but like a total repositioning. A lot of times we're remarketing, rebranding, all that. And so we come in and we fix it all up. And because we force appreciation, because we can make it happen, and really create the appreciation versus speculating on appreciation and hoping values go up over the next 5 years, we're able to create a lot of equity in that first 12 months. And then we're able to turn around and refinance and cash out our investors. So instead of selling, I just refinance at like a 70% loan to value. That gives me enough money to then pay off my bridge loan or whatever that short-term construction loan is. And it helps me pay off my investors. And to me, it's more predictable. It's more predictable to know where interest rates and where the economy is going to be 12 months from now or 18 months from now than it is like maybe 5 or 7 years from now. 5 or 7 years from now, we could have very different economy, very different political circumstances, could have 3 different presidents in the next 5 years, right? Yeah. So we just don't know. And for me, I like the predictability of buying at a wholesale price, creating appreciation, and then cashing out my investors. Now it's, for lack of a better term, house money in play, right? So now we can let the property ride and we can sit on it. Doesn't matter what happens to the economy for the next 10 years. I have a long-term, long amortization schedule, fixed interest rate loan, non-recourse loan in place where the market can go up, it can go down. I still have tenants in place paying the debt service, paying the operating expenses, and putting cash in my pocket, and I can ride this thing out because I don't owe any of my investors any more cash.
Got it. So yeah, that's exactly the deep value add. That's how I position it, right? Where you buy it at a really good value, very, very low value. You really put all your effort to push up the fast appreciation, and then you go and refi it in 12 to 18 months, I guess, right? Is that what it is? And
we do some new construction stuff too down in the Southeast. Okay. We'll build some townhouses. Like we'll do new construction. It'll be like an A or B plus kind of an area, but it's not luxury. We do only workforce type housing. So we can build townhouses for about $85,000 per unit, $80,000 to $90,000 per unit, and they'll rent for about $1,300 a month for us. And so that allows us to get the values where we need it to then refinance and do the exact same thing just for new construction. So we do a little bit of that and more repositioning of existing assets, though.
Yeah, very interesting. I really like the model. I was doing it like 2-3 years ago, and I don't know. For me, I got worried about the market, and I start looking for deep value add, and also deep value add is harder to find. Even though you find it, what happened? The sellers are basically taking the value by pushing up the pushing up the price on the deep value add. It becomes not a deep value add anymore.
Right. Yeah. And I don't pay for the value. I don't pay a seller for the value that I'm going to bring to the property. Right.
Okay.
So there are some sellers that, they're like, oh, well, this could be worth this much. Yeah. But I have to create that value. You're not creating that value.
Yes,
so we find, we're a lot of times direct to seller, off market type properties. We're big enough now, especially in Georgia and South Carolina, where we're getting, we're kind of one of the first. We have the broker relationships where we're one of the top 5 buyers in town, and you get those deals before they actually hit the market. But in a lot of other markets, I'm not, the biggest buyer in town. So I have to go off market, direct to seller kind of stuff. And we get a lot of our properties from mom and pops who have owned it for 20, 30 years or inherited the property. They just didn't put any more money back into it. The total debt on the property is very low, if at all. And they just don't want to put any more money into it. They don't want to do the work. So we buy it from them, or I buy a lot from smart entrepreneurs, really sharp people who make a lot of money in their traditional business. And they just put their money in real estate. And then they didn't have a joint venture partner. They never got educated, right? They don't know how to manage a management company or interview a management company. And they just get, they get abused in the business, right? Yes, so they're like, I'm making too much money in my traditional business. This thing's going to sink me. Let me just fire sale this apartment building. So yeah, we that's where we buy most of our properties from. And then Yeah, again, we reposition it. We do the stuff that hedge funds aren't willing to do, and we're qualified enough to take down a 200 unit building that needs a pretty heavy value add, and do it that way. But like you said, though, James, I'm starting to buy a little bit more stabilized assets, more like 85, 90% occupied, of just a little bit of tweaks in the common areas and amenities, and then bumping up some rents. We're doing a little bit more of that right now, just because of where we are in the market cycle.
Yeah, correct. That's absolutely. But you gave a lot of details there. I want to go a bit more detail into that. So you said you look for deals that is in class A and B, but more distressed, right? So, I mean, you're basically shrinking your funnel as well, right? Because you're going for that.
Niche gets rich, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I see very niche. People say, hey, real estate's my niche. No, real estate's an industry, right? That's not a apartments isn't even a niche. Like, you need to figure out what you are really, really good at. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I'm really good at is 80 units to 100 units. That's distressed. It's bigger. It's too distressed for the small guys to get a loan on it, because they don't have the background or the resume to go and take down that kind of stuff, and the qualifications to do that, because they haven't done it before. It's a big project, big value add, and at the same time, it's too distressed for the hedge funds, because they just want to park money and let it sit, let it ride, and let it cash flow from day one. So this is my niche. It's A and B class areas, good areas, desirable areas, just distressed kind of properties. And we're able to get in there, and we have all the financing, all relationships all in place. We could raise the money pretty easily, because we've done it, because we can cycle our money every 12 to 18 months. I don't have to wait 5 years to get my investors their money out. I can cycle it every 12 to 18 months. So as soon as I pay them back, guess what they say? Let's go do another one. And then they're involved in, 3 deals in 5 years versus 1 deal in 5 years. And it makes my life easier, because I don't have to go and raise money from new people all the time.
Got it. That's a really good model. So does the investors, after you cash out, when you pay them back, do they stay in the deal as well?
Yep. So mine's a little bit different than traditional syndication. Mm-hmm. Usually me and my joint venture boots on the ground partners, we keep 70 to 80% of the equity in the deal. Okay. And then we pay a fixed pref to our investors, regardless of the property's performance. So even if it's not cash flowing, it's predictable, because I know that, if I'm borrowing $2 million, I'm paying, let's say, a 10% pref, I'm going to pay $200,000. That's just a cost of the deal. I got roofs, I got flooring, I got paint, I got cost of capital. It's an extra $200,000. So I build that into my model, and then I can make those payments to them. They feel more confident, more comfortable, because now they have a predictable return on their investment. Then I refinance, they get all their money back off the table, and then they still maintain 20, 30% ownership without any money invested. And we're able to do that again and again and again. And so, with traditional syndicators, if I try raising money from somebody who's used to a traditional syndication, they're like, why would I ever do that? Well, you get a predictable return. And secondly, you get 30% ownership. But if we roll your money in 3 different deals, it's actually 90% ownership, right? Correct. So it's 30%, 30%, 30%. And so overall, they're actually ahead of what they would do in a traditional syndication, where they might get 70 or 80% of the equity in one deal. So it actually works out better for the investors. It works out better for me, but it's a lot of work on my part. We spend a lot of money. Sometimes we spend a lot of money on advertising in new markets until we have those relationships built up. And then in order to find those off-market direct-to-seller deals, and it's a lot of work. Like my business partner down in Georgia that I own a bunch of property with, like he goes and sleeps at the properties for 3 nights a week. He spends 4 full days there, sleeps in a B-class apartment, on a blow-up mattress. The guy's worth $25 million. And then his brother, who's our other partner, is worth another $25 million. And they're sleeping, at the properties, doing the work, kicking the tables, making sure construction ends up on time, on budget. And that's what you need to do, man. I see a lot of people who are trying to be this puppet master, and they're not willing to actually do the work of taking ownership over this thing. And they just want to go and syndicate and then go back off to whatever they're doing. And dude, to me, like there's something to be said about just having an old school diligence and work mentality, and what you can get done if you're willing to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, real estate is very, very powerful, right? Especially commercial real estate, where you can fast appreciate. And especially if you are going to get majority of the equity in the deal, like, why not I sleep, right? In 12 months, 70 to 80% of this deal is going to be mine. Why not work hard, right? And I'm
it's
with
a season of your life, right?
Yeah.
If you're putting your head down for a year or 18 months, but then you can generate millions of dollars of equity, like why not do that? And so,
Right.
yeah, that's just kind of the mentality that we take.
Correct. Yeah, it's very powerful to create wealth, and I think the investors appreciate that as well, because now you're able to give them back their money and all that, right? But your model is assuming that you are able to refi into a long-term loan in the 12 to 18 months, right? So what happens if that model breaks?
Yep, absolutely. So that's the inherent risk with our model, is what happens if rates change, what happens if banking tightens up, what does that all look like? So a couple things. One, I don't think rates are going to change as much in 12 or 18 months as they would maybe in 5 or 7 years. So to me, we underwrite the deal. Like right now, I just closed on 500 units. And I got two buildings, around 250 units each last month. And I got a 3.83 and a 3.88 interest rate. Even right now, rates went up back. They're hovering around 4.25 right now for stabilized assets. We're underwriting the deals with 4.75 to 5% interest rate on the back end for a stabilized property. So we're taking on some of that. We're underwriting it for that. We also underwrite our rents very, very conservatively. And we're at such a low basis in the property, usually around 60% of what that stabilized value is. We have options. So we can go, like Fannie and Freddie are tightening up big time right now.
Yep.
That's okay, because we're at such a low basis that we can still go over to CMBS, commercial mortgage-backed security, or a life insurance company. And even though they offer a lower loan to value, I'm okay with that because I'm at a low enough basis. I can still cash out my investors. So worst case scenario, my investors still get their money back, and we have a lower LTV loan. So maybe there's not some refi proceeds or anything like that we can take off the table. But at the end of the day, they're going to have more equity. Their equity is going to be worth more in the property, and the cash flow is going to be more on a recurring basis for that. And and the other thing is, even when banks stopped lending to people in 2009, 2010, guess what? They were still lending to somebody. And it was the people with the big balance sheets with stabilized portfolios. And I have a big enough balance sheet and a stable enough portfolio where I'll be able to get refinanced regardless of what happens in the next 12 to 18 months. So I'm not that concerned about it. And again, because our basis is so low, we have such high cash flow on these properties. I have different options, and I have a good team. I have a good team of mortgage brokers who, even if I had to slap another, 3-year loan on there, even if it was at 6% interest rate or 6.5% interest rate, I can still cash flow it enough, covers my operating expenses, covers my debt service, still puts cash flow in the bank. It's a crappy conversation that I have to have with my equity investors, but they keep on making 10% on their money, so they're happy. Worst case scenario is they get their money back in 48 months, then, it is what it is. So I've taken a look at all the downside. I've talked to people with billion-dollar portfolios and said, hey, poke holes in my model. And that's the inherent risk, is what if you can't refinance? And so that's one of the things. The deals that I just closed last month, they were already in that 85, 90% occupancy range, like right at 90, 91, I think is what they were. And so we got a Fannie Mae loan actually on it. That's a construction loan that we'll be able to put supplemental debt on it. So it's already a long-term loan, 30-year amortization, couple of years of interest only. And then whenever we create the appreciation, 12 months, 18 months from now, we'll be able to put supplemental debt, which is kind of like a second mortgage almost, but through the same lender. So they're cool with it. And so the only real risk I'm taking is the interest rate on that portion of the debt. I have a $17 million mortgage on it right now. And then the other will be about another $7 million. So the only real rate risk is, I'm at 3.8% on $17 million. Even if the other $7 million goes to 5%, my blended cost of capital is still 4.25%, right? Or maybe a little less. So, that's one of the ways another way that we're reducing that ongoing risk.
It's very interesting. Now you're convincing me to do deep value add again. So because it's just so hard to mess up, right? I mean,
I mean, the construction is where it all comes down to.
Yeah.
If you stay on time and on budget, you're in good shape. But if you don't have a good construction partner, like you can really get burned bad and the deep value add stuff. So you just got to understand what your team looks like, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are. And for me, we're okay with it. We're pretty good at it. And we have a really good construction team. My partner in Georgia, man, I put him toe to toe against anybody in the country from a construction standpoint. And he can build new construction. He can renovate existing units. And so, and because he has the mentality of, let me go and sleep at the property 3 nights a week, away from his family, away from his 5 kids, he's willing to take that on because it's, again, a season of his life. Like that's the kind of partners that I like to partner up with.
Yeah. Hustlers, right? That's they will go really, really far in life, and that's what we need. It's very interesting. So is there any deal that you find that you didn't do that you think you should have done? After you passed on it, you realize, I should have done that deal. Is there a deal that something like that? That's a good question.
Let me think on this. We try to kill deals. I try to kill every deal that comes across my plate, especially right now. Mm-hmm. I try to look for every reason to walk away from every deal that comes across my desk.
Okay.
If I cannot kill the deal, then I know it's a good deal. Right. And so, are there, as soon as you're like, hey, well, I think I can scale back construction and make it work. Wrong idea, wrong strategy, because the last thing you want to scale back is the construction and the value add process. Because then your rents aren't going to hit where you expect them to hit, because you're not able to attract better tenants or higher quality tenants, and they don't see the value that you're adding to the property. At the end of the day, like people are like, oh, well, I think we can make this one work. No, the only way you can make it work is if you go back to the seller and negotiate a lower purchase price, because that's the only variable in this equation. What rents are going to be is what rents are going to be. What the construction budget is what the construction budget is. The only variable here is the purchase price. And you make your money on the buy side, right? Mm-hmm. So are there deals that I passed up on that I should have moved on? Maybe. But for me, man, I don't have much of a risk tolerance. I only buy stuff that I know that is very predictable to me. That's why I don't play the stock market. I can't control if, Volkswagen.
There's no control.
I can't control if Elon Musk smokes a joint on public television and the stock drops by 15%. I can't control that. I like being able to control real estate and having very predictable returns for me and my investors. And if there's any sort of, and sometimes it's a gut check, even if everything looks good on paper, but my gut doesn't feel good about it, I'll say no to a deal. It's just, I've seen enough deals go south, and as quickly as we can build our net worth being in commercial real estate, one bad deal can take out your legs and wipe you out totally. So I'm just not willing to take on that risk, especially when it's, takes so much work in order to get to where we are.
Yeah. I mean, I want to touch on your gut check thing, because I know numbers doesn't lie, and we are numbers guys, right? We want to underwrite things, make sure things works on paper and all that. But I've walked out of a deal because everything works very well, and the numbers looks good, but there's something wrong in that deal. I don't feel good, right? So yeah. What I didn't discover, and I've walked out from that kind of deal as well, and that's very important. I mean, real estate is not only a science where everybody says a numbers game and people who are good in numbers will do it, but there's a lot of art to it as well, where it's just something wrong somewhere, and it comes from experience. And
comes from experience. That's the only way you get that. It's from experience, and it's usually personnel kind of things that make me walk from a deal. I'm just not comfortable with that joint venture partner, or with that correct. Management company, or with whatever the seller's saying. You can kind of see through the lines once in a while.
Yeah.
Whatever that is. And so, I mean, my model is I'm really good at raising money. I'm really good at sourcing deals. We're pretty good at creating, like we can handle a lot of the back office type stuff. I'm back in Cleveland, Ohio now is where I live. And we can handle a lot of the management side of things, collecting of rents, work orders, tenant communication, all that kind of stuff, all the administrative side. From here in Cleveland, we just need a local boots on the ground partner and some local property managers, maintenance personnel. And I always have a joint venture partner locally. And so if that joint venture partner isn't strong enough, then usually I'll walk away from the deal, because I think it's important to have somebody with vested interest, with equitable interest in the deal, who's local to the property, who can go put their eyes on it a couple times a month to keep everybody honest. To keep the management company honest, to keep the local property manager, maintenance personnel, leasing agents, and just come in and kick the tables once a month and just let people know that we're paying attention. Because if you don't pay attention, then they take advantage of you.
Yeah, it's a hard work. I know exactly how you feel in terms of how much hustle and how much detail and how much you have to be on top of the property managers. it's not their baby, it's your baby, right? And there's so much of details that if you don't ask them, they're just going to slack off, right? Because, they are paid differently from what we are paid for, and we are the owners, and it's just completely a different ownership level. That's very interesting. So is there any deal that you think after you bought, it didn't match from what you thought in the beginning, right? You thought, this is how I'm going to execute it. But once you buy, you thought, oh, it's completely different from what I thought. And how did you overcome it?
Yeah, I mean, every deal is a learning experience, right? And you get kicked punched in the gut enough times, and eventually you learn. Fortunately, when I was growing my portfolio, I bought my first building in 2012, and I bought it for an 8-unit building for $30,000, right? Okay. So I'm in Cleveland, Ohio, buying units for $4,000 a unit. I put another, $50,000 into it. So I'm all in for $10,000 a unit. And it's hard to lose, right? And so in 2012, 2013, 2014, as I'm growing my portfolio, while I'm going through these learning curves, the market's getting better, and that was able to absorb a lot of my screw ups early on. So I still made money on every single deal that I did, even though I was learning on a lot of these things. There's only one building, a 44-unit building that I bought about 2-3 years ago, maybe, that I've lost money on. And it was one of those things. Hey, I saw all the leases. I saw the rent roll. It was 80% occupied. And I bought it from a guy that I know, somebody that I actually know. And so I bought 44 units, and he's like, yeah, man, 80% occupancy. Great, man. I'm going to come in. I'm going to renovate the last, 9 units, turn those over. I got a local team. He was out of state. So my team can come in, clean it all up, clean up the common areas. I think I could make $300,000 on this thing in the next 12 months pretty easily. And it'll cash flow a little bit in the meantime. So I buy it, and I find out it's only 25% economically occupied. Okay. So there's 33 or 35 tenants or something in place, and only 11 of them are actually paying rent.
Correct.
And so I learned my lesson there. It's not about occupancy, it's about collections. And so going in, and this is a buddy of mine, right? This is somebody I've known for many years, and grabbed dinner with him, his wife, my wife, and not a lot of times, but a few times, and close enough where I'd call him a buddy. And all of a sudden, he sells me a building, tells me it's 80% occupied, doesn't tell me it's only collecting 25%. And then all of a sudden, I had to kick out 24 tenants, and turn over 24 additional units. So imagine what that cost does now to the $300,000 I thought I was going to make. And this was one of the only times I brought an investor in, and he wanted 50 of the deal. Let me bring the money. You do the deal. Okay, cool. And I ended up stroking a check for about $35,000, $40,000 when it was all said and done. And I could have gone to that investor and said, hey man, you want to I need 20 grand from you. I'm putting up 20 grand of my money. We're selling this thing. It's a pain in the butt. We're going to lose money on it, but we got to get rid of it. And that's part of the deal. And instead, I stroked the entire check, gave him 100% of his money back. And because he didn't make a return, I gave him equity in another deal of mine without him having to put up any money, just to kind of soften that blow. And so I think when you do the right thing by your investors, word spreads. He says great things about me. He wants to invest in more deals with me and stuff now. And you just do the right thing, knowing that there's always another deal. There's always another opportunity. That one, we could have held on to the property long-term and let it cash flow. That's a cool thing about buying apartment buildings. You can really screw up. And if you had to, you could hold on to it, manage it, let it cash flow for the next 10 years. And eventually you'll actually make money on these things, right? Even with that big of a screw up. Yep. But for me, and where my long-term vision is, and my team and everything else, it was just more of a C-class type property. It took up too much management and too many headaches. It wasn't big enough. We couldn't really scale it. So we made just a business decision to sell it and to eat that loss. But it's the only building I ever lost money on. And now we've gone through pretty much everything, and we've gotten kicked in the crotch enough times where we know what to look for across every building. It's very hard to pull wool over our eyes unless it's grossly fraudulent on the seller's part. So we've another big thing that I didn't know early on that I wish I should have done, that's always a consistent issue with every building we've ever bought, is the plumbing and the drain tiles leaving the building. It's always one of those unknowns. So now we spend, $3,000 to $5,000 to scope every single drain line in every building that we put under contract to ensure that there's not going to be this massive plumbing bill, unexpected plumbing bill once we buy the property. So that's one of the things that's been a big deal, and then just verifying collections. Like those two things from a financial due diligence and a physical due diligence perspective, like those two things that we've dialed in now. And we always did everything else. We always inspected the roofs and every unit and the electrical panels. And, one of the other things that I didn't do early on that I do now, and we've done for many years now, is I used to only walk the vacant units and the common areas, right, and the mechanical rooms. And then all of a sudden you realize that not everything, like they're not showing you all the vacant units. There's other vacant units that they're telling you are occupied. They just didn't want you to see them. And they're like, I bought buildings where tenants were turning on and off their faucet with a wrench because there was no actual faucet, right? Wow. So you don't realize a lot of that stuff early on when you're a dumb kid, but I've been through it all, man. I've been through everything. We walk every single unit on a 500 unit apartment building. We will walk every single unit, and we'll put a report together on every single unit. It's a 1-page, just kind of condition report. We'll take 30 pictures of every single unit. We put it all into like a Google Drive or a Dropbox folder. And that way we have all the information we could ever need on this property. We're not relying on our memory to look up all that stuff. It's all there. Our contractors can see it during the entire due diligence period, all that stuff. And so, I think everything's a learning curve, right? I think you learn from everything. And, the thing in this business though, is like, if you can get past all those learning curves, if you can get past some of those losses and some of those getting punched in the stomachs, eventually your process is so dialed in, like they can't pull wool over your eyes, that you cannot lose on deals. Right. And that's why we walk away from a lot of deals that we do, because they're waiting for somebody who's an idiot, who doesn't know what they're doing, to come in and buy their property and overpay for it, or not do the due diligence that they're supposed to be doing, and all these other things. So, but eventually, what you're doing enough where your risk is so minimized because you've done all the due diligence on these things. It's a very predictable business at the end of the day. Like you said, it's all about numbers, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's crazy nowadays, right? I mean, with the market being as hot as right now, with so many people looking for deals, there's so many bidding war, right? So what nowadays, the smarter thing that a lot of brokers and sellers are doing, they say day one hard money, right? Now they lock you in, right? So you go into a bidding war, you pay this huge amount of hard money, and sometimes they don't even give you early access, right? So now you're locked in. You can find 1,001 things, and you're locked in, right? You can't.
I don't do that stuff. I don't play that game.
Yeah.
I think when you don't need to if you're off market direct to seller.
Correct.
If you're going through brokers, they're going to do that to you. And there's some people who have crazy money and they're willing to risk that. I'm not willing to risk any of that stuff. A lot of people, they spend a lot of time on ROI, return on investment. I spend a lot of time on ROI, return of investment, and making sure I get all of my money back. I never, ever want to risk principal. And so that deal, that's just too risky of a deal. If they want hard earnest money from day one and I haven't already walked the entire property, I'm not interested in doing it.
Yeah.
I think once you get to a point where you can, if you're partnered up with a great sponsor, or you are a great sponsor yourself, and you have the business acumen that like you have, James, or that I have, like I'm able to posture up with these sellers now and kind of say, hey, yeah, no problem. You can go steal somebody's earnest money. That's okay. You can go ahead and do that, but they're not going to be able to close on this deal because you're lying about the condition of the property or the financials or whatever. Or if you're willing to actually sell it to me, give me my opportunity to do my due diligence and shoot straight with me on everything. I promise you, I'm more capable of closing than any of the other people that you're getting bids from right now. So, or that you're getting offers from right now. And so I've been able to kind of build up my credibility in that way, where sellers are willing to take less money and offer me better terms than they would maybe with somebody else, because they know that I can close on the property. They don't want to get dragged through the mud, right?
Correct. Yeah, it's very interesting nowadays, the way the market's being played, right? They're putting all this handcuff of hard money day one, and there's another handcuff where they said you must take a you must do lending with our own in-house lending. Right? So that's another handcuff, right? There's two or three handcuffs that brokers are putting on a seller. And the third subtle handcuff that they do nowadays, when they close, they send out a mail saying that, oh, this buyer paid day one, huge amount of money, 500,000. They're telling everybody else.
They're trying to set that expectation, right?
If you want to come and buy deals nowadays, you better be ready, right? So many handcuffs are being put on buyers. But I think a lot of sellers, if they want to work with a good buyer, right, people who want to really do business, they don't want who want to just make the money on earnest money and waste a lot of time getting people to walk through all their units and getting their stuff all being nervous, right? So just find a guy who's willing to do it and who is a true buyer, who knows what he's doing and can close, right? So
the good brokers with long-term visions and long-term goals know to find quality buyers, and that's better than just anybody who raises their hand with earnest money.
Correct.
There's a lot of, like there's in every hot market, there's people who are short-sighted, who got into real estate real quick just because they wanted to get rich quick, kind of a thing, and and they'd rather just do it that way. And then anybody who raises their hand, they're willing to go with. And those aren't the brokers you want to work with. You want to work with the people who have been around the block a few times, who understand what a good buyer looks like, can build those ongoing relationships. Because, as soon as the market shifts, if things cool off, it's going to clean out all the unqualified buyers and unqualified brokers as well.
Correct. So let's go to a bit more personal side of things, right? So what I like about you is you're very, very positive, right? So you like to look at life very positively, and it's hard to do because sometimes you always have something negative that comes in, right? So do you want to explain about, right? In this business, there's something negative that you always want to talk about. But how do you maintain that positivity?
Yeah, I mean, I told you the story when we met up a couple of weeks ago or a month ago. Just less than 90 days ago, I was out golfing and I got rocketed to the face with a golf ball, 100 miles an hour from about 30 yards away. It shattered my upper maxilla bone. It knocked out 4 of my front teeth and just shredded my gums and my lip open. And I like bleeding like crazy. I looked down. I'm like, oh, I feel my teeth dangling from my gums. And I looked down at the ground and I kind of took a knee so to make sure I didn't pass out. And I looked down at the grass. I'm like, man, this grass is really, really well manicured, like beautiful grass here, on this golf course. And I'm like, how the hell am I able to keep such a positive attitude in this? I'm thinking about my thoughts. I'm very reflective in that regard. And I was like, well, here's why I could see it positive, because I got hit in my mouth and not in my eyeball, right? Or not in my temple. I could be blind or dead if this thing was an inch higher than where it was. And so, man, I don't know if it's law of attraction. I don't know if it's, you can call it God, you can call it, the universe, you can call it whatever. But I think when you put the positivity out, it comes full circle, right? And it's kind of like you reap what you sow kind of a thing. And I sow seeds of positivity. And so I jump in the golf cart and I get taken back to the clubhouse. And you know who's dining in the clubhouse? There's 2 dentists and an ER nurse having dinner in the clubhouse. They put me in there. They look at my teeth. They drop what they're doing. They take me to their dental office 15 minutes down the road. They stitch me all up. They put my teeth back in. And I'm able to save my teeth. And 90 days later, you couldn't even tell that this whole thing happened. Like, I'm still going through some cosmetic stuff, but overall, like it wasn't a massive, like it was a terrible situation. But I think because I was positive, it all just kind of came to fruition. So, one of the things that I've always practiced is not saying I have to do something, but saying I get to do something. When I go out to dinner with a bunch of my friends, and I pick up the tab and they're like, dude, you don't have to do that. No, I don't have to do it, but I get to. The reason that I do what I do is so that I can help people out and I can pay it forward, right? Oh, hey, you don't have to, cover that bill. You don't have to do this. No, but I get to, right? I had to eat soup for about a month afterwards, but I'm thinking, I'm eating a tomato bisque basil soup, right? I don't have to eat mud pies like people do on the other side of the earth. I don't have to walk 2 miles each way to go and get fresh water like people have to do on the other side of the earth, right? And some people on this side of the earth. Like, I get to eat soup, right? I get to eat something that's a bisque that has basil in it. Like, are you kidding me? Like, there's people who would kill to be able to eat that kind of stuff. And I didn't have 14 teeth knocked out. I only had 4 teeth knocked out. And I think when you just compare it and you put it in that type of perspective of, man, it could have been way worse. Like the situation could have gone and there's still people, even with me, with my teeth dangling from my mouth, being in that circumstance, I'm still in a better circumstance than a lot of other people who don't have any food, who don't have any shelter, who don't have any clothes, who don't have any support. They're being trafficked by like human trafficking, like all that kind of crazy stuff, right? Like even when I have to go out and I had to raise $7 million for deals last month. And now I don't have to raise $7 million. I get to raise $7 million. That's a pretty awesome problem to have, And I think just putting it in that perspective of shifting your I have to's to I get to will really make you more gratuitous or have more gratitude for life.
But was it because of your parents, or do you think because you just had some event in your life that you think now I have to change my time, or is just how you have been?
Yeah, it's a good question. My mom's always been very positive. My mom's always been, hey, you have something else to compare it to, right? Like compare it to this, compare it to that. And I think that's probably what planted the seed of always looking at it from, yeah, you're right. I guess it could be way worse, right? It could have been totally different circumstance or she always used to say, hey, if that's your biggest problem today, you got a pretty good life, Tim, And when I was growing up, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like my basketball just popped. If that's your biggest problem today, it's a pretty good problem to have. You're safe, you're secure, you're healthy. You get your family, you got people who love you. You got food on the table and clothes on your back and a roof over your head and like all those kinds of things. Like, you put it in perspective, there's people dealing with a lot worse things. And yeah, I think my mom kind of rooted that into me maybe early on, and it definitely stuck. And man, I just show gratitude, especially once you have kids, and you realize, man, like all I want is their safety and their security and their healthiness and their happiness. And as long as they're happy, man, I'm happy, that kind of a thing. That's really amplified it over the past 4 years. I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old now. And so just putting things into perspective that way has been a big deal.
Awesome. Is there one proud moment in your life that you think you will be remembering it for your entire life?
That's a good question. James, you got some good questions today, buddy.
I want you to think and answer.
Yeah. I mean, is there one
proud moment that you think, at the end of your life, you're going to say that, I'm really, really proud that I did that, and it's going to be,
Yeah, I don't know if it's one specific moment, but maybe just like kind of how I live my life. Okay. I try to do it on a daily basis, right? And maybe it's not something profound. Maybe it's not something that's like one specific thing that was a catalyst. Mm-hmm. I'm driving to the office today to come and talk to you, and some dude cuts me off. Like, dude, maybe he's got some priorities or something going on. I don't know what other people are going through, and for me to judge and get pissed off because somebody cut me off, why would I do that? I think really, really, I'll tell you if there's a really proud moment once my kids grow up to be decent human beings, and making sure that I want to live my life as an example of what an exceptional life can look like. So I want people to be like, hey, if Tim Bratz, some kid from a blue-collar family in a blue-collar town outside of Cleveland, Ohio, can build up a big portfolio and still maintain good health and still maintain positivity and still maintain great relationships with his wife and with his children, with his friends, and still engage and maybe not be balanced, but have harmony in his life. Like if this guy can do it, I know I could do it. If I can inspire people, whether that be at one moment in time by a Facebook post or an event that I host or being on a podcast, if I can inspire people to just be their best, which is what I have on my wall here. And that's not do, that's be, that's like consume that all together. It doesn't have to be the best. It would be your best, right? There's always going to be somebody with bigger, more capable, more resources, more whatever. I don't think it's healthy to compare yourself to other people, but to compare yourself to yourself and making sure that you're advancing on a daily, weekly, monthly, annual basis is a big deal. And so, I think I just try to, make my kids proud, make my mom proud, make my wife proud, make my friends proud, inspire other people. And I try to do it more in a daily activity versus just do it one time and look at back that one moment. Try to give back and try to, like, I had suites to the Cavs games when LeBron was here in Cleveland. All right. And so what was that, 2 years ago, I think, right? Mm-hmm. No, it was last year, I think. And so last year, I had a suite to the Cavs game. I got the entire series for the first series. I forget who they're playing, but essentially when you buy a suite, you get it for the entire series, however many games they play at home. And they played 4 games at home. And so, the first game I went to, I brought some business partners and was able to pay for the suite that way. And then the second game, I brought some family. And then the third game, I'm like, hey, I was excited to go, but like, not as excited as I was maybe the first or second time. And I'm like, somebody else deserves this more than I do because I've already had this experience, right? Like, how can I pay this forward? And so I posted on social media, hey, I got a suite to the Cavs game. I have 18 tickets that I can give away, a couple parking passes, stocked with food and drinks and whatever you guys want. Like, does anybody know of a family or a few families that I can give these tickets to that maybe wouldn't have this experience on their own, but really deserve because of how good of people that they are? And man, like, it got so much momentum. It got so many shares, and then the news picked it up and did a story on it. And I had about 500 or 600 applications that came through for people nominating other people to get tickets to this Cavs suite. And so, really, it was really hard to break it down and find. Essentially, I found 4 or 5 families. I think of 5 families at 3 or 4 tickets a piece that I gave the tickets to. And it was pretty easy to narrow it down to like 25 because I wanted somebody who had maybe faced adversity, overcame that adversity, and then found a way to pay it forward. Not just overcoming it, but actually paying it forward and creating a difference. And so, there was one girl whose sister died of an accidental overdose of drugs. And now this girl who's still alive, her younger sister, goes around and speaks at different schools about opioid problems and drug problems and how to, overcome that, and different resources to plug into for that. And so I'm like, wow, this girl's at the age of 16 years old making an impact on the world. Like, she deserves some tickets. There was another gentleman who lost his daughter to a congenital heart defect. She was 3 years old, and loses his daughter to this congenital heart defect. And instead of I can only imagine how dark of a place he must have been in. And he ends up opening up a nonprofit organization to help families with other kids with congenital heart defects, to give them the support and the help and the conversations and everything, and making a massive impact up here in Cleveland, Ohio, right? This guy's such a good guy. I give him the tickets and he gives them to one of the people that are in his nonprofit, And it's like, man, these people are just amazing individuals, And so I found 5 awesome families like that we were able to give the tickets to. And like, doing stuff like that really makes me feel good. And what's even better is that there were 500 people who I was able to create a catalyst by doing this, who now 500 people are thinking in a positive way about people who make a positive impact on their life, and just that positive ripple effect that's created, I think, is really, really powerful, and it was really, really cool to see.
Yeah. That's what when I talk to you, I get very inspired, because it's not about the portfolio of real estate or what, right? It's how you look at life and how you look at things, right? And how you think positive. And that's the most important when I look at a person, right? So that's really awesome.
Yeah, and you do an awesome job with it, man. I mean, and you realize that it's not the portfolio, it's not the money that's noble. It's what you can do with the money that's noble. And utilizing it for good. Like, I could afford a really expensive, fancy, exotic car, and I drive a $20,000 Jeep just because I don't really care, right? I know that there's a bigger impact I can make by being a better steward of my capital, putting it in more deals, or paying it forward in ways like that. So I get more fulfillment from that than from maybe driving something fancy.
Yeah, it's, even for me, I can't really imagine driving an exotic car because I really need it? I mean,
at the end of the day, it's like, it'd be cool. I'd rather just go rent one,
rent one.
I know I'd have buyer's remorse. I just know myself personally. And I know that as soon as I bought it, I'd be like, I don't really need this,
Yeah. And you can't really drive fast.
And here's the thing, like, I like watches, I like clocks. I like taking nice vacations. I like traveling first class. I like that kind of stuff. I like making memories and traveling the world. I love all that. So that's where I get my drive from, on making a lot of money. For other people, they like fancy cars. They like fancy houses. That's okay. I got a good buddy, man. He drives a Rolls Royce and has multiple $100,000 watches, but I know he doesn't do it for flash to impress other people. He does it because when he looks down at his watch and when he gets into his car, he always sits back and he's like, man, I had to overcome some adversity. I had to go through some shit in order to get this watch, in order to be able to afford this car. And I've had to grow as an individual, as a person, and make an impact on enough other people's lives positively that then the universe came back and gave me enough money to be able to afford this car and afford this watch. And so I think it depends on perspective. And if that's how you look at it, I have nothing against people who have fancy, nice things, material type things, because I know he's one of the most giving people that I've ever met as well. And so it just, man, it's perspective, I guess, right?
It's perspective. Yeah. Yep. Awesome, Tim. So why not you tell our audience how to get hold of you?
Yeah. I'm pretty active on social media. Find me on Facebook, Tim Bratz. I run my own Facebook account. It's not somebody else running it. I do some education stuff on how to get involved in apartments and things, but hit me up with a message there if you're looking for formal education. But I give away a lot of free content, a lot of free insight, and I try to provide a lot of value on social media and stuff. So just connect with me on Facebook. That's going to be the best way. And man, James, I appreciate all the value that you give and all the value that you create and all the content that you put out there. And man, you're creating the ripple effect yourself on making a positive impact on people's lives. So appreciate you too, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks for coming on the show. It was really a very inspiring show, I'm sure, for me and for my listeners, and everybody's going to be enjoying it.
Appreciate it, brother. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye.
That's it for this episode. If you'd like to learn even more, check out James's free audiobook. It's the audio version of his best-selling book on passive investing. You can get the audiobook completely free, along with other valuable resources, by visiting www.achieveinvestmentgroup.com/free audiobook. Also, be sure to join our Facebook group too. To find it, just do a Facebook search for Multifamily Investors Group. Thanks for listening. Join us again for another episode next week. See you then.